What do you think is your purpose in this life?
I think Bitcoin is the answer to that question. I know it sounds maybe cliche and maybe predictable, but it very, really, truly is the case. I think
If you would describe El Salvador with one word, what would that be?
paradise.
Welcome to my kingdom. This is my first episode, so it's very special. And thank you for being here. How do you feel about it, that it's my first episode and you're here?
I'm quite flattered and amazed. I did not know that it was your first episode, so congratulations on your show.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to start with, who is Saifedean?
I'm some dude who writes things about Bitcoin, basically. That's how most people know me. My name is Saifedean Ammous. I am 43 years old. I've written 3 books related to Bitcoin. Before that, I was a university professor. I used to teach economics. I have a PhD in sustainable development. It's kind of like economics. And yeah, I've written the Bitcoin Standard, the Fiat Standard, and the Principles of Economics, my 3 books. They've been translated into many languages, about 38 languages for the Bitcoin Standard. Total between all 3 books, something like 70 languages or so. And yeah, what else do I know?
What do you think is your purpose in this life?
I think Bitcoin is the answer to that question. I know it sounds maybe cliche and maybe predictable, but it very, really, truly is the case. I think before Bitcoin was invented, I was obsessed with the problem that Bitcoin fixes. Even before before Bitcoin was invented and before I knew about Bitcoin, I was quite obsessed with this, and I was studying it, and I was reading about it and learning more and more about it all the time. And then Bitcoin comes along, and it's just, everything falls into place at the perfect time, I feel, for me to write and teach people about Bitcoin, because I was already teaching economics. I taught economics at the university for 10 years. And so I've developed the ability to teach concepts and communicate economic concepts professionally over 10 years. And then Bitcoin comes along, and it's exactly what I would like to see happen in the world. And because of my job, I'm in the place where I'm able to do this in a professional way. Yeah, to be able to teach people about Bitcoin and help people understand Bitcoin and help people get into Bitcoin.
Tell us about your fiat food and the term itself, because I know a lot of people don't know about like the term fiat food, and I'm very interested as well because I grow my own organic food. So tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so in my second book, The Fiat Standard, I discuss the problems of fiat money and the problems of the system of money that everybody in the world today uses. Almost everybody, I should say. And in the Bitcoin Standard, I studied the Bitcoin network. In the Fiat Standard, I studied the Fiat network. And I thought about writing about the Fiat Standard using the same tools that I used when writing the Bitcoin Standard. So when I was writing the Bitcoin Standard, I tried to find the best way of communicating the essence of how Bitcoin works. And so then I thought, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did with Bitcoin and do it with fiat. And so that way we'll be able to figure out how fiat works, because Bitcoin is the prototype of the simplest kind of monetary network, because it's just all software. So it shows us all the basics that you need, all the essential non-negotiable parts that you need for having a money supply. And so then you can compare that to fiat and see how fiat works. And the difference, of course, is Bitcoin was designed by an engineer who gave it the all the essential properties that it needs, but he didn't really add much beyond that, because that's how engineers work. Whereas fiat was designed not by anybody. It evolved over hundreds and thousands of years of people using different forms of money. It's something that we take for granted, not something that we can usually analyze. So using the analytical framework of Bitcoin, you can analyze fiat, and you can see how fiat works. And so I arrive at the conclusion, or I start from the starting point, is that fiat is constantly being devalued because fiat is mined or created, just like, with Bitcoin, we have Bitcoin mining where we make more Bitcoin. With fiat, we have fiat mining, and that's by issuing loans. Every time you borrow from your bank isn't taking other people's money and giving it to you. Your bank is making new money. It's mining new fiat. So the whole system rests around mining fiat everybody borrowing, everybody gets into debt. And then I trace out the implications of living in a society in which the money is constantly devalued and the banking system is constantly creating more debt, and government is able to finance itself almost infinitely because it can create debt, and its banks and its central bank allow it to continue to borrow and finance itself. And so the result of this is twofold. On the one hand, the value of money is constantly going down. On the other hand, the government is taking all that value that's stolen from the money, and they have enormous amount of money to be able to spend. So what does this do? If your money is going down in value all the time, things that you want become more expensive. And so the good food that you want is more expensive.
Organic.
Exactly. The good food becomes more expensive, and so then you have to make do with cheaper, terrible food. Because if you eat cheaper and terrible food, it's not as expensive and it becomes manageable for you. So over the last 50 years, you look at how money has lost its value, and you see this reflected also in how food has lost its nutritional values as well. So food today is a lot less nutritious than it used to be, even though it is bigger, but it's got more sugar in it. It's bred for being able to last longer on the shelf, but it's not used as, but it's not, it doesn't contain as much nutrients as it used to. The soil that we eat from is depleted because, because we're, the fact that the money is losing its value means that people don't have a place to save, and so they don't have a way of providing for the future. So people become short-termist in everything, and they start consuming capital in all of its forms. Rather than saving and accumulating capital, which is what hard money allows you to do, easy money makes you save less and save less wealth, so you have to liquidate your capital. And one way in which we liquidate our capital is that we deplete the soil of the nutrients, and so we produce food that has fewer nutrients. And I think this explains a lot of the problems that people have in terms of health around the world, diabetes and obesity. This is because people don't eat enough nutritious food, and they eat a lot of cheap industrial garbage, which has been promoted by governments around the world. They keep telling you you should eat the cheap industrial garbage and eat more of it because it's better for you, and it just happens to be cheap. Also, governments, of course, subsidize it. They pay people to buy that stuff. And so it sounds like it's a good thing because those people are poor, they can't afford food, but really you're taking money from them and you're giving it to them to eat the poor food, and so you're making real good food more expensive. You're subsidizing cheap food and you're making the alternative more expensive. So all of that, I believe, is linked to inflation, to the destruction of money. And this is why I think historically, if you look at how it's affected our diets, I think the most noticeable thing is that it's reduced significantly the amount of meat that people consume. And people have replaced red meat with chicken or with plant proteins, which are very inferior to red meat for our bodies. But we have so much propaganda over the last 50 years telling people that red meat is bad for you. It's bad for the weather. Cows are farting and it's going to ruin the weather, supposedly. Or eating red meat, the thing that all humans have eaten for all of history.
We were cavemen.
Exactly. We have cave drawings of people hunting. We don't have cave drawings of people growing broccoli or drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me like modern diseases aren't going to be rooted in the ancient foods that all of our ancestors had eaten. And I think if you try it, ultimately, that's really the best proof. So, but we've had this very persistent attempt to try and get you to eat cheaper garbage because of inflation. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I love this subject because 11 years ago, I started to grow my own vegetables, fruits, and then I started to advocate about this, like being self-sufficient in your food. And then when I discovered Bitcoin, I was like, okay, this goes along, like you can be self-independent in your food and you can be self-independent in your economy with Bitcoin. So for me, it's the same. Like if you are independent in this, then you don't have to depend on anyone, because I know the government and the system want you to be, they want to control you, and at the end, well, you cannot eat Bitcoin, So the first thing is to be like healthy and grow your own vegetables, fruits, and have your small gardening, That's what I do. And that's what I'm like advocating for.
Yeah, although I'll slightly disagree with you here that, I don't think it's bad to trade with other people. I think governments, the problem we have is with the fact that they control the money supply and they can print money.
Yeah.
And so people sometimes take that a little too far in thinking that all trade, the division of labor, people being able to trade with one another and produce different things, that's all part of the system. But that's not really part of the system for me. The problem is with the money, the inflationary money. But I think it's good that people trade with one another. So I don't really believe in the concept of self-sufficiency.
Okay.
Because, I mean, you can't make your own phone, you can't make your own clothes, you can't make your own technology. If you really try to be self-sufficient, you're going to find yourself extremely, extremely poor. You might not survive for a couple of years if you try and do it.
Well,
So
yeah, but
you-
at
you-
least you're in the main thing, the elements, like fruits, vegetables, like in the main things.
So personally, I don't eat fruits and vegetables. I just
Okay.
eat meat. And so my answer to that is that you don't need to grow your own fruits and vegetables, just eat meat. The best way to eat fruits and vegetables is to feed them to a cow and then eat the cow. That's what cows are. Cows are an outsourced digestive system. They spend all their day eating all the plants, the things that we can't eat, and poopings, taking out all the bad things from the food,
Yeah.
and keeping all the good things, all the nutrients, they put them in the ribeye for you.
So you
That's
don't eat
plants.
any fruits, any vegetable?
No, 8.5 years now.
Okay, so only meat, only
meat.
protein.
Yes, not protein, meat.
Meat. Okay. Interesting.
Thinking about it in terms of protein confuses people because then you could end up eating plant protein. No, it's
Okay,
meat. You have to
meat.
eat red meat.
What about
You-
seeds?
Huh?
Seeds.
No seeds.
shows
Nothing. Nothing. If it's a plant, I don't eat it.
Okay.
You're made out of red meat. You should eat red meat. It's that simple. Red meat and water. Your body's made up of red meat and water. So just eat red meat and water.
How do you think the fiat system has changed the role in women's society?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of things that have happened over the last couple of centuries that have changed the role of women. I think perhaps the most important is the use of modern energy resources, modern hydrocarbons, gas, oil, and coal. Because what they did is that they made all of the most important jobs unrelated to physical labor. So the importance of physical labor went down significantly with the invention of engines and pumps because they move things around. And so now you no longer have to carry things. The most important job is not how much you can carry, it's being able to drive the car or drive the airplane or drive the boat. So hydrocarbons and having a lot of energy, having access to a lot of energy, reduces the importance of physical strength and therefore reduces the gap between men and women in terms of productivity. So the most productive people in the world today are not the strongest people. In fact, very few jobs require physical strength because machines can do whatever the strong people can do more efficiently. And the most productive jobs are just people typing on keyboards, more or less. So they don't involve a lot of physical strength. And so that erases the gap essentially between men and women. So I think that really is the most important driver of the changes in gender relations over the last couple of centuries around the world. I think that one allows women to, the fact that we're moving toward an economy that doesn't rely on physical strength makes women much more productive and allows them to have an income that's much closer to the income of men than would be the case in a world in which everybody depended on physical strength. And in that case, women had to rely on men. They couldn't be productive on their own. You know, some good things happen and bad things happen at the same time sometimes, and it's difficult to discern what is causing what. So on the other hand, we also have fiat, and I think fiat has had a detrimental effect on the family, which I discuss in my book, The Fiat Standard. Because what it does is that it encourages people to think short term, basically, because it destroys your ability to save for the long term, so it destroys your ability to think of the long term, so it makes you more and more short-termist. And that drives the tendency away from thinking for long-term projects. And the most important way that manifests perhaps might just be family. So I think because of the fact that you can't save for your future, and because of the fact that government can provide so much things for you, many people have over the last century, a lot more than previously, moved toward the idea that I don't need to invest in a family, I just pay taxes and the government takes care of me. Or I don't need to provide for my children, the government will provide for the children. Or I don't need to provide for my parents, the government will provide for my parents when they're old. So this fiat giving the government money and access to money allows them to distort the family and distort people's decisions for investing in family. And I think the result of this is that a lot of people, obviously both men and women, have underinvested in family over the last century. And you see this with plummeting fertility rates. You know, in the U.S., the fertility rate is 1.65. In some countries, it's even lower than that. So the population is basically running out. You know, the average person is not having 2 kids, which means the population is shrinking, and it's really quite remarkable. I mean, if you live 70, 80 years, you have a lot of time to do a lot of things. 1 or 2 children is, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of diapers and drama, but you've got a whole life, you know. Making time for 1 or 2 children is not that difficult. 3, 4 children is doable, I would say. So I think that has been probably helped move the independence of women in a negative direction for the family and for the happiness of both men and women, in that they've both now tempted to become more independent in a way that's not really healthy. You know, in that they forsake the family, and so they end up being alone and they don't have children. And I think fiat probably has something to do with that. And I would imagine, and if you see this in Bitcoiners, I mean, Bitcoiners are always joking about this, but it is true. People find Bitcoin and decide to get married and have family and have kids. And I think the fertility rate among Bitcoiners is likely much higher than among the rest of the population.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how do you think Bitcoin is changing the role in women today?
Well, I think it helps women with independence in that they're able to have their own money, and they're able to save for the future, and so that is beneficial in that regard. But I also think by encouraging long-term thinking, it's going to likely place more of an emphasis on family. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. I think fiat is driving for short-term behavior, and that reflects in not caring about family, whereas Bitcoin would drive you to think more in a long-term perspective. That's going to make you more oriented toward family.
And is it your first time here in El Salvador?
No, it's my second time. I came here once last year in May.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And if you would describe El Salvador with 1 word, what would that be?
Paradise. This
Okay.
is what paradise looks like. I've always imagined this would be what paradise is like. Amazing sea in the
Yes,
Pacific.
we're in El Sonte, in Palo
Something.
Verde.
And then behind us, incredible mountains and volcanoes, and just everywhere you drive, you see amazing nature. It's so abundant. You know, you have mangoes everywhere, mango trees
Yeah.
everywhere on the street.
Exactly.
And it's a really abundant, very blessed place with amazing weather, sunshine, and really, it's just very beautiful.
So when are you coming here to live? When are you coming?
I know, I keep thinking about it. I'd love to do it. It would be really great to do it, but it's a little bit difficult. I have 3 kids.
They will be happy here.
They will
at the
be, but
beach.
you know, bringing them here and taking them away from the extended family is complicated. It's very far from here to get our family to visit or for us to go back to visit. So I think now with the little kids, it's going to be difficult for the next few years, but it's definitely something on my agenda for a few years down the line. I hope so.
Yeah, you should totally.
Definitely.
And what do you think of El Salvador being that Bitcoin is legal tender?
I think it's great. I think it was a huge surprise for me. I did not know that this was going to happen, and when it happened, I was very shocked. I did not expect it to happen this early,
Yeah.
and I think it's very good. I think it's very telling that President Bukele has been able to clean up the country and fight the war on crimes and on the gangs, and make the country secure. And also, he is a Bitcoiner. I think that also is another example of what I talk about in terms of the time preference. Bitcoiners just think long term, and so President Bukele was willing to do the thing that was difficult in the short term in exchange for the long term reward. And the people of El Salvador, I think, are going to be eternally grateful whatever happens, because they've already had 3 years of security so far since this has happened. So it is truly amazing. It's wonderful, and it's great that he is the first leader in the world to get into Bitcoin, because is going to be a very good advertisement for Bitcoin, I think. And I think it's going to do the country a lot of good, because the government is holding more and more of its cash balances in Bitcoin, and I think that's going to work out very well for them in the long run.
Have you seen something similar in some of the countries that you've traveled, like what's happening, like in here in El Salvador, like adopting a little bit of like Bitcoin or doing like some transactions? Have you seen something like that? Or Do you thought before El Salvador being legal tender, do you thought another country is gonna do it first?
Yeah, I had no idea to really, no reason to think which country was going to be the one that was the first to do it. I don't have any kind of particular information. I remember when people used to ask me if you thought which country would do. Now I remember actually, I did have an answer to that question. It was Switzerland.
Okay.
I thought Switzerland would be the first because they were the last country to leave the gold standard and they have a history of hard money. So I thought they would be the first to get the value proposition. Definitely did not expect it to be El Salvador. No reason to think it would be El Salvador, but it was. And it's great because this beach is beautiful. And so now I get to come here and enjoy the beach, which is nice. And Switzerland is also beautiful, of course, you know, for any Swiss people here listening. I also love Switzerland deeply. And, you know, I highly encourage you to get into Bitcoin as well. But yeah, it's a fantastic thing. And of course, the country is so beautiful. And it's also so underdeveloped because of the crime problem that it's incredibly easy to see. As soon as you land, you think, wow, this place needs to be, this place can easily be a lot more developed and a lot more productive than it currently is, because up until a few years ago, people just basically couldn't leave their homes for most of their lives or walk in the streets because they spent all their day at home because they were worried about the crime. And now people can go out and you have a social life and you have an outdoor life. People can play sports in the streets. So I think it's going to continue to improve, and it's a really, really exciting time. Very few places in the world have a sense of optimism about them. Most places, most people are depressed and angry and bitter and fighting with one another and in politics and just, you know, doing real fiat things. But here people have a serious optimism to them, and it's something very nice about it being in this truly beautiful country. So I'm really looking forward to it.
A lot of new opportunities here too.
Exactly.
A lot.
Exactly. An enormous amount of opportunities.
Yes.
Yes.
Your first book, the Bitcoin Standard, how is it related to El Salvador?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, when I wrote it, El Salvador was not yet into Bitcoin, and they had not announced Bitcoin as legal tender or started buying Bitcoin. So I had no reason to mention anything about El Salvador. I don't think I mentioned it at all in the book. But I think there is a very, very, very interesting lesson to be learned for El Salvador from the book. So in my book, I discuss monetary history. And I discuss how the Roman Empire began to collapse when it started to destroy its money. And when its money was destroyed, the empire collapsed. And then the Renaissance happened when Europe went back on a gold-based monetary standard. So the money of the Roman Empire was destroyed, and then Europe was went into what is effectively known as the Dark Ages, where there wasn't a lot of trade because there wasn't a fixed form of money that could travel between different cities, because there was no one central form of money like when the Roman Empire was. So there was more trade across Europe and across the Roman Empire than happened after the Roman Empire collapsed. And then when the city-states, particularly Florence and Venice, started to make their own coins, and those coins were reliable quality, and then those coins were being used around the rest of Europe for trade, and then eventually they started spreading more and more. That allowed a new monetary system to emerge around these currencies, which were fixed quantity of gold and easy to a certain level of purity. So that allowed an enormous amount of trade to happen, and that brought about the economic renaissance and eventually the Industrial Revolution. A big part of it was the return to gold. Britain had the Industrial Revolution. They were on a gold standard. Before that, Holland was the world's premier economic power, and it was on the gold standard. And so the return to the gold standard after the collapse of the empire, of the Roman Empire, happened in the second half of the second millennium. And in that period, the Renaissance really happened. So I think El Salvador can play a similar role if you look at it historically. El Salvador could be the Florence of the future. This is the Florence. This is the Venice. This is the place where people have the ability to use a money that appreciates over time, and they can spend that money anywhere in the world. And they are not being farmed. In the rest of the world, your money is farming you. You are the product in the government's money. They use that form of money in order to basically take away the product of your labor and rob you of it. And in places where you have hard money, you escape that. So everybody's able to produce things for themselves. They can invest in the future. And that's what allows us to have prosperous civilization. That's what allows us to have peaceful cooperation and trade And so hopefully for the future, El Salvador is going to be the new Florence.
Can you tell us some hobbies that you have? What hobbies do you have?
My main hobby is football, basically. I play a lot of football and I watch football. I've been playing football for more than 40 years now.
What's your team? Your
My
favorite team?
Liverpool.
I love Liverpool.
Really?
Because I love the Beatles.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So I went to Liverpool only because of the Beatles.
Oh,
but
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big Liverpool fan. I've watched them live many times.
Okay.
I was in the final in 2005 with AC Milan when they drew 3-3.
Okay.
So this is my kind of hobby. And nature. I like the beach. I love to spend a lot of time in the beach.
Oh,
And,
here is perfect. You can start surfing.
I know. Maybe we should finish this interview so I can go to the beach, right?
Well, thank you so much, Saifedean,
you.
for coming to my new podcast. This is the first episode, and I'm very excited. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here in El Salvador. Thanks a lot.
See you on the second episode.